Food costs money and you're too clumsy, my father would say, pointing at the piece of meat I dropped. I was 6 the first time it happened. A slice of apple slipped from my fingers, tumbling onto the linoleum floor of our small kitchen in suburban Ohio. The floor wasn't clean. Crumbs, dust, and a faint stickiness from spilled juice clung to it. I reached to pick it up, thinking I'd toss it in the trash, but my father's hand clamped onto my wrist. His grip was firm, his eyes narrow. He didn't yell that time, just pointed at the apple and told me to eat it. I hesitated, my stomach twisting at the thought of the dirt. But his stare was unrelenting, and I was too small to argue. I brushed off the piece as best I could and popped it into my mouth, the faint grit crunching between my teeth. My mother was at the sink, her back to us, her shoulders tense. She didn't say a word. That was the beginning. Growing up, our kitchen became a battlefield. My father was obsessed with food and money, a combination that turned every meal into a test. If a piece of chicken fell, a spoonful of peas scattered, or a crust of bread hit the floor, he'd make me pick it up and eat it. It didn't matter if the floor was freshly mopped or covered in dog hair from our old mutt who'd wander through. "You think money grows on trees?" he'd shout, his voice echoing off the walls. I'd kneel, my cheeks burning, and eat whatever I dropped. Sometimes it was just a quick bite, the taste of dust mixing with mashed potatoes. Other times it was worse, like the time a grape rolled under the fridge and he made me fish it out, fuzzy with lint, and swallow it while he watched. My mother never intervened. She'd sit at the table, her eyes fixed on her plate, cutting her food into smaller and smaller pieces. I could tell she hated it, the way her hands trembled when he started yelling, but she'd just press her lips together and stay silent. I didn't blame her, not really. She was afraid of him too. He wasn't violent most of the time, but his temper was like a storm cloud, always looming, ready to break. I learned to eat carefully, to hold my fork like it was a lifeline, but accidents happen. And every time they did, he was there, pointing, commanding. It wasn't just me. When I was younger, I tried inviting friends over for dinner, hoping for some normalcy. Big mistake. One time, my best friend from middle school dropped a carrot stick during a meal. My father's face lit up like it was Christmas. He made her pick it up and eat it, right there in front of us. She laughed nervously, thinking it was a joke, but he kept staring until she did it. She never came back for dinner. Word spread, and soon no one wanted to eat at my house. I stopped asking friends over. It was easier to avoid the humiliation. By the time I was a teenager, I'd gotten better at avoiding his wrath. I'd perfected the art of balancing food on my plate, eating slowly, deliberately. But no one's perfect. When I was 15, I found a moldy piece of bread in the pantry. I was about to throw it out when he caught me. He grabbed the bread, held it up like it was evidence in a courtroom, and told me it was still good. "Waste not, want not," he said, his voice low and dangerous. He made me eat it, mold and all. The taste was sour, like damp earth, and I gagged but forced it down. He called it a life lesson. I called it torture. The worst part was how unpredictable he was. Some days, he'd let a dropped fork slide, barely glancing up from his plate. Other days, a single spilled grain of rice would set him off. I started to wonder if it wasn't about the food at all, if it was about control, about making me feel small. I'd lie awake at night, replaying dinners in my head, trying to figure out what set him off. I never found a pattern. Update 1: The fork incident. When I was 17, everything changed. It was a humid summer evening, the kind where the air feels heavy and the windows are open to catch any breeze. We were eating spaghetti, the sauce splattering everywhere. I was tired, distracted from a long day at school, and my fork slipped from my hand, clattering onto the floor. It wasn't even food this time, just a utensil. But my father's head snapped up, his eyes gleaming with that familiar intensity. He started his usual routine, pointing at the fork, telling me to pick it up and make it right. I was so done. I was almost an adult, and the humiliation was unbearable. I refused, crossing my arms, my heart pounding. That's when I noticed something odd. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and angled it toward me. It wasn't obvious at first, but the way he held it, the slight tilt, made me realize he was filming. My stomach dropped. Why would he record this? I lunged for the phone, desperate to stop whatever he was doing. He yanked it back, and in the struggle his hand swung out, catching me across the cheek. The sting was sharp, but the shock was worse. He'd never hit me before. My mother gasped, her fork frozen halfway to her mouth, but she didn't move. I ran to my room, my face burning, my mind racing. Why was he filming? What was he doing with it? I waited until late that night, when the house was quiet, and snuck into his office. His computer was old, the kind that hummed loudly when it turned on. I knew his password. It was the same one he used for everything, a combination of his birthday and the word money. I opened his files, my hands shaking, and found a folder labeled Lessons. Inside were hundreds of videos, each one time-stamped, going back years. They were all of me, eating food off the floor, gagging on moldy bread, my face red with shame. Some were of my friends, too, the few who'd been brave enough to come over. I clicked on one, my heart in my throat. It was from a year ago, me picking up a piece of chicken that had fallen during dinner. The camera zoomed in on my face, capturing every flinch, every tear I tried to hide. I felt sick. I opened his browser and checked his history. He'd been uploading these videos to a niche website, some obscure corner of the internet where people paid to watch disciplined content. My father was making money off my humiliation. The views weren't huge, but there were comments. Strangers praising his tough love, calling me ungrateful, saying I needed to learn my lesson. I wanted to throw up. Update 2, taking control. I didn't sleep that night. I copied the videos onto a USB drive, my hands trembling so badly I could barely click the mouse. I didn't know what I was going to do with them, but I knew I needed proof. The next morning, I avoided my father, slipping out of the house before breakfast. I went to the library, the only place I could think clearly. Sitting at one of those scratched-up wooden tables, I stared at the USB drive, trying to figure out my next move. Confronting him felt dangerous. He'd already hit me once. Going to my mother was pointless. She'd never stood up to him before. I felt trapped, like I was still that 6-year-old kid eating dirt-covered apples. Then I had an idea. It was risky, but I was desperate. I created an anonymous email account and sent a message to the website hosting his videos, attaching a few of the files. I explained that I was a minor in some of the videos, that I hadn't consented, and that I wanted them taken down. I didn't know if it would work, but I had to try. For days, I checked the site obsessively, refreshing the page on the library computer. Nothing changed at first, and I started to lose hope. Maybe they didn't care. Maybe I'd made things worse. A week later, I noticed the videos were gone. The entire account was deleted, wiped clean. I felt a rush of relief, but it was short-lived. When I got home, my father was waiting. He didn't say anything about the videos, but his eyes were cold, calculating. He knew something was up. Dinner that night was silent, the air thick with tension. I kept waiting for him to explode, to demand answers, but he just ate, his fork scraping the plate. My mother kept her head down as usual. I started to wonder if I'd won a small victory or just poked a bear. That's when the first plot twist hit. A few days later, I got an email from the website. They'd not only taken down the videos, but had reported the account to the authorities for hosting content involving a minor. I hadn't expected that. My heart raced as I read the message, realizing this could go way further than I'd planned. I didn't know if my father would face consequences, but the thought of him getting caught terrified me as much as it thrilled me. I started locking my bedroom door at night, afraid of what he might do if he found out I was behind it. Update 3. The Hidden Truth. Life at home got weirder after that. My father stopped his floor-eating demands, but he was different, quieter, more secretive. He'd disappear into his office for hours, and I'd hear him muttering on phone calls late at night. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for the police to show up or for him to confront me. But nothing happened. Instead, he started acting overly nice, bringing home takeout, complimenting my grades. It was unnerving, like he was trying to cover something up. I didn't trust it. I started digging deeper, driven by a mix of fear and curiosity. I borrowed a friend's laptop and used a VPN to check other corners of the internet, places he might have posted. That's when I found it. A forum, buried in the dark corners of the web, where he was still active. He wasn't posting videos anymore, but he was writing about me, detailed posts about my lessons, describing every incident with a twisted pride. The worst part? He wasn't just talking about food. He wrote about watching me sleep, about tracking my movements to keep me in line. My skin crawled as I read it. This wasn't just about control or money. It was something darker, something I hadn't seen coming. I felt like I was drowning. I couldn't stay in that house anymore, not knowing what he was capable of. I started planning my escape. I was 17, almost 18, and I had a small savings account from babysitting jobs. I reached out to a distant cousin in California, someone I'd met once at a family reunion. She was older, lived alone, and had always seemed kind. I told her I needed a place to crash for a while, leaving out the worst details. She agreed, no questions asked. I spent the next few weeks quietly packing, hiding my plans. I didn't tell my mother. She'd only try to stop me or, worse, tell him. Finale, breaking free. The night I left, I waited until the house was silent. My father was in his office, the glow of his computer screen seeping under the door. My mother was asleep, her soft snores echoing down the hall. I grabbed my backpack, stuffed with clothes and the USB drive, and slipped out the back door. My heart pounded as I walked to the bus station, the cool night air sharp against my skin. I kept looking over my shoulder, half expecting him to chase me down. But he didn't. The bus ride to California was long, 36 hours of staring out grimy windows, my mind replaying every humiliating dinner, every video, every post he'd written. I cried a lot, but I also felt something new. Freedom. When I got to my cousin's apartment, she didn't pry, just handed me a mug of tea and showed me the couch I'd sleep on. For the first time in years, I ate a meal without fear of dropping something. A month later, I got a message from an old neighbor back home. She'd heard rumors that my father had been questioned by the police. Something about inappropriate content online. I don't know if it was about the videos or the forum posts, but I didn't care. I wasn't going back. I blocked his number, my mother's too, and started rebuilding. I got a job at a coffee shop, enrolled in community college, and started figuring out who I was without his shadow over me. The second plot twist came a year later. I was scrolling through social media when I saw a post from a distant relative, someone I barely knew. It was a photo of my father at a family event, smiling like nothing had happened. But in the background, I saw her, my mother. She was holding a sign, small but clear, with my name on it and the words, "I'm sorry." I stared at it for hours, my chest tight. She'd never apologized before, never reached out. Part of me wanted to call her, to ask why she'd stayed silent all those years. But I didn't. I wasn't ready. Now, at 19, I'm still figuring things out. I don't eat at tables much anymore. Too many bad memories. I prefer picnics, open spaces where I can breathe. I've started writing about what happened, not online, but in a journal just for me. It helps. I don't know if I'll ever confront my father or forgive my mother. Some days I think about mailing that USB drive to the police, letting them decide what to do with it. Other days I just want to forget. The biggest twist, though, is how I've changed. I used to think I was weak, clumsy, worthless. But surviving that house, outsmarting him, getting out, it showed me I'm stronger than I thought. I don't know what's next, but for the first time I feel like I get to decide.